What a magnificent place in this beautiful city. I think we have a magnificent opportunity, but also a huge responsibility. Today, we have about 3.5 billion people living in cities. Within the lifetime of our students, we're going to go to 7 billion. We're going to double the population that lives in cities. This has never happened before and will never happen again. That means that half of the homes that we'll have in 40 years haven't even been built today. What a great opportunity to do it right. And it can be very nice and very civilized. In the US, the population is going to grow by around 120 million. That's what all forecasts show. So that means that 1 out of 3 homes that will be around in 40 years have not been built yet. So if all of this is going to happen in the next 40 years, let's think what we have done in the last 40. Because if what we've been doing is good, okay, let's just do more of the same. Well, in the last 40 years, this is the kind of cities that we've been building all over the world. We've been just letting supply and demand work in something that doesn't work because the land is fixed. It doesn't matter how much demand there is, there's not going to be any more supply. So we've been sending the poor people to the further away where there's no transit and no jobs and no education. We've been focusing on cars, and not on people's happiness. And this is the kind of cities that we have been doing. And by doing this, we haven't even solved mobility. Unfortunately, the emerging countries like Russia and China and Brazil are doing exactly the same things. This is all of Florence, Italy, and one highway intersection at the same scale. It's funny that people work for 51 weeks of the year to go 1 week to enjoy this, when we could be doing that and actually enjoying the 52 weeks. So the cities, by the way, are not responsible for the what, for the amount of people. But the cities are responsible for the how. This is how we've been building cities in the last 40 years. For a child, an older adult, a handicap, becomes almost like a slave to a person that has a car even just to go for an ice cream. So the last 40 years have not been very good. So we gotta improve the cities that we have today, but we also got to create great cities for many, many more people. All of this is how do we want to live? Once we decide how do we want to live, a lot of the other decisions are a lot easier. So I'm going to take you through 8 messages in the next 18 minutes. It's not about the money. It's about having vision and having action. In my previous life, now I live in Toronto, but I lived in Bogota. And I was commissioner, and I learned that it was not about the money. Also, now I advise many cities, but before I was doing. For example, we did over 200 parks in one term. All over the city, small ones, big ones. This was one of them. The Pope came here, gave a mass for 1 million people, and then the Pope left, and nothing happened. There were not even sidewalks. Nothing happened in 27 years. Why nothing happened? Because change is hard. In Bogota, in New York, in Copenhagen, everywhere change is hard because you try to change and the cave people show up. You know them, the citizens against virtually everything. But we cannot accept no for an answer. We gotta find solutions to the problems, not problems to the solutions. So it was like this for almost 27 years, and in 4 years we turned it into the nicest park for passive, for active, for contemplative recreation. It's not just about doing soccer fields, it's also about having nice places for people to sit and enjoy nature and chat, things that people can do in groups, things that people can do by themselves. The uses and the activities are absolutely critical in the parks and the public places, and it works very, very well. Something else that we did is I found a small program of a few miles and a few thousand people called Ciclovia. In North America, we call it Open Streets, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. Sunday mornings, we pop it up, and people come out and walk and bike and skate. How do you do it? It's really, really simple. You open streets to people, you close them to cars, and the magic happens. We do 75 miles every Sunday and holiday, so about 65 days of the year. And we have people young and old and rich and poor and fat and skinny. Everybody comes. But since not everybody wants to walk or bike or skate, along the route we do aerobics or Tai Chi or Cha-Cha-Cha. Anything. The common denominator is physical activity. It's amazing. We get young and old. We get everybody. We get 1.7 million people every Sunday and holiday. About 1 out of 4 citizens come out. And it's not just about recreation. It's much more than that. It's changing minds. All of a sudden, we realize that the streets that are 1/3 of any city, when we look at New York from the air, 1/3 are streets, are public space. They belong to all of us and can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year. It's also about social integration. All of a sudden, we see, and we needed so much in this time for people to get to know each other. And whether it's Paris or it's New York, it's a place where we meet each other as equals. Actually, that was my inspiration. Reading Olmsted's biography, he was talking about Central Park. He said 150 years ago, everybody hated everybody, locals and immigrants, rich and poor. We needed to find places where we could meet as equals, and that's what Ciclovia and Open Street is. Second, let's create 880 cities. I'm the founder and chair of 880 Cities, and also was chair of World Urban Parks, and I've been lucky to have worked in over 350 different cities all over the world. And everywhere I go, people say, Gil, what's 880 Cities? Well, 880 Cities is not about walking or cycling, it's not about parks or streets. Those are the means. The end is, how can we help to create successful cities? Anywhere where people can go out and dance, because DJ Vika is organizing those dances. We're living longer. So it's about that. It's about successful cities and healthy communities for people of all age where they're going to live happier. Living happier is something that is really critical for everyone. And we got to think, what if everything that we did in New York, everything, the crosswalk, the sidewalk, the library, the church, the buildings, the restaurants, the parks, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80. It's not 8 to 80, it's 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's good for the 80, it's going to be good for everyone, from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic. And let's create great cities for all. That is the simple but powerful concept of 880. Third, we got to move on sustainable mobility. And by sustainable mobility, I'm talking about walking and riding bicycles and using public transit and new uses of cars. But obviously, walking is by far the most important. Why? Because everyone came here walking. Every single trip begins and ends by walking. We walk to public transit, we walk to the car, we walk to places. So walking and cycling is not a joke. Walking and cycling should be safe and enjoyable everywhere. Walking and cycling is not a frivolity. Walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for most people. For all children and youth, you might be the son or the daughter of the wealthiest person in the US. If you're under 16, your only individual mode of mobility is to walk or bike. So safe and enjoyable should be almost like a human right, unless you think that only the people that have the money and the age and the desire to have a car have a right to individual mobility. That's what we're also talking about democracy and human rights and equality and sustainability, because everything is linked to everything. Walking is how we were created. It's fantastic. You know, just like the birds, they fly, or the fish swims, and the deer runs. People, we walk. We walk. And when we walk, we're so happy because we use all our senses. We see the children playing, or youth going to school. We hear the birds singing. We go in front of a bakery or a coffee shop and we smell the aroma. The children walk. The older adults walk. We walk in the summer. We walk in the winter. But we got to make it safe. Safe. And it's not safe. Yesterday, people driving cars, killed 741 people walking. That's more than one every 2 minutes. They're not accidents. Accidents when they could not be avoided. They can be avoided. They're incidents. We got to work on Vision Zero. No one should be dying on the streets, walking or cycling or in transit or in cars. No one. But some people talk Vision Zero, but then they don't put the money or the actions. So instead of Vision Zero, that becomes zero vision. We got to act. And if we're going to improve walking, it has to be the priority. It's not when we do sidewalks like this ones. You know? or these ones in Miami, or when we allow the cars to go on the sidewalk, or when we don't even do sidewalks, we're telling this woman every day, you are a second-class citizen. And nothing is as important as the sidewalks. The sidewalks are the most important infrastructure in any city. Because, on the streets, we go from point A to point B on bicycles, on transit, on cars. But on the sidewalk, it's not just about going from point A to point B. We go to the sidewalks. In the summer, we go to the sidewalks. In the winter, the children catch Pokemons. We also catch a bus. The sidewalks is where we make boyfriends and girlfriends, and we develop a sense of belonging to a city. And we meet the person selling flowers and vegetables and fruits. And it's really where we build community. So sidewalks remind us that walking is much more than walking. So nothing as important. A few weeks ago, I was in Buenos Aires, and people were dancing tango in the sidewalks. Actually, sidewalks is much more a family of the parks. Maybe parks and recs should be managing sidewalks more than public works. And if we're going to put walkability, nothing as important as lowering the speed. All of the streets, all residential, will be 20 miles an hour. Why? Because if you get hit by a car at 20 miles, 5% probability of being killed. At 40 is more than 80%. These are not technical issues. We know that if we put a small island on the crosswalk, we eliminate more than half of the incidents. Why are we still doing crosswalk without islands? When we know that they are going to save lives. Kids are going to a field trip, not all cross on a line, they wait. And these people of all ages. Older adults are killed the most in intersections, twice as many as the proportion of the population. And of course, sustainable mobility is not just walking. It's also riding bicycles, using transit, new uses of cars. I'm not saying that this is the end of the car industry, but the way we use cars is changing very rapidly. The young people, 16 through 24, in the last 4 years, purchased fewer cars than in the last 40. And we're having new uses. Now everybody's talking about driverless cars and autonomous cars, and they do all these beautiful drawings. Oh, everybody fits. And they say, with driverless cars, we're not going to have traffic jams. Well, I don't think it's the driver making the traffic jam. If we don't change our behavior, this is what traffic jams are going to look like. It can be great or it can be horrible. It depends up to all of us. How do we regulate? Technology has to work for people, not people for technology, as we did 100 years ago when the car came, and maybe we should have done networks for cars and networks for people walking, cycling separately. Of course, we gotta ride bicycles. And this could be children going to school anytime, and older adults. We need to be bold and ambitious. Cities like New York, if New York wants to look at cities that are worst, in 5 minutes you do a list of 1,000. But if you benchmark with cities that are worse, eventually you look like those. No, you gotta say which cities of similar income level that New York have the best sidewalks and the best level of happiness or public mental health, physical health. In cycling, you gotta benchmark with Copenhagen. Copenhagen has horrible weather, cold winters, hot summers, it rains all year round, but 41 out of 100 trips are done on bicycles, 41. And now they're not saying 41 is enough, they wanna go to 50. And men don't need shirts in the summer. And women don't need special shoes. If we're going to improve bikeability, last week I was working in Florida, and I saw these highways. It's not about painting lines when the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, and you do 3 lanes for cars. Who's going to bike there? Then I saw this other street, 55 miles an hour. No, when we do any bicycle infrastructure or any infrastructure in the city, if it's not safe for an 8 and for an 80-year-old, it's nothing, nothing. Don't call it a bikeway. It's just paint on the pavement. This has to be our indicator. When we do any infrastructure in the cities, we gotta think of everybody, all ages, all abilities, or else it's not good enough. Let's just do a street. Let's put this protected bikeway 2 blocks and nothing on the other block. And let's have the decision makers and the media write down and come down the other and see which one is better. The only thing that gets more people cycling is lowering the speed in all the neighborhoods and developing a grid of protected bikeways. So everything I said about 20 miles for walking is the same for cycling. But also we need a minimum grid of AAA bikeways, all ages, all abilities. We need connectivity. New York has done a lot of bikeways, but it lacks the connectivity. You need to work on that connectivity, thinking of daytime and nighttime and winter and summer. And if you don't have the political decision to make it permanent, that's fine. Do painted as long as you put bollards, enhance those painted lines. That's why people bike in Copenhagen, because they got a grid. They have connectivity. You can go from anywhere to anywhere in the city. And the quality of the infrastructure is the symbol of the respect that we have for people. Also, we need to improve public transit. One of my brothers is mayor of Bogota now, and he says the civilized city is not the one where the poor have cars. It's the one where the rich use public transit. We need to create public transit for everybody. And of course, we need to have buses, and we need to have trams and trains. Part of it is infrastructure, but it's programs. The other day I was with a mayor of Malmo, and he said, Gil, people didn't like the buses. So I got our buses, I put a nose, we covered the wheels, and now they look like trains. Part of this is marketing. But part of marketing is not doing this horrible. We need to dignify the uses of public transit. Please do not cover the windows. Also because it's very dangerous at nighttime. I mean, sell advertisement, but you don't have to cover the windows to sell the advertisement. And even worse, don't cover the windows with car advertising. Because then it's really painful. And people say, well, we're going to put public transit and walking and cycling. Well, do we have space? Do the mobility math. Do you want one of those or 140 of those? Do you want one of this or 145 of those? Walking, cycling, transit takes up a lot less space. 4, we gotta have parks, uses, activities, management. I think the biggest problem that we have in parks is management. By the way, management is not synonymous of maintenance. Maintenance might be 20% of management. Management, of course, includes also maintenance, picking up the garbage, cutting the grass, but it's also having grandparents and grandchildren doing bread. It's having people walking and cycling and playing chess and having lunch and a siesta and talking and chatting. Management is having volunteers, but giving them the tools to work. Management is engaging the citizens, asking them before, during, and after, what is it that they want. It's about having the resources, human, financial, physical. It's about having a good fit with the city so that not all parks are having the same activities. Management is also about safety, but it's not about putting up signs, beware of the thieves. You know, you need a lot of police when the parks are empty and the public spaces. You don't need when there's a lot of people. So the lowest cost for safety in parks and public spaces, uses and activities. I go to cities and it seems that it's easier to find the millions to do the parks than the thousands to make it work. Let's do moving the park, we don't have money. Let's do knitting in the park, we don't have money. Oh, Halloween is coming up, let's do punk, we don't have money. It's about the uses and the activities that are gonna make things click anywhere. And we've seen some really great parks here. I mean, we know the magnificent activities on Central Park, on Bryant Park, but also we need equity. We need all of the parks in the cities, in the wealthy areas, in the poor areas, everywhere we need to have that. And we say, should we have large parks or small parks? Well, we gotta have both because they satisfy very different needs. The small neighborhood parks is where we develop a sense of belonging. That is where we meet our neighbors. But we're not gonna be able to play tennis or soccer, so we need medium-sized parks. And we're not gonna be able to go canoeing, so we need large-sized parks. So at the end of the day, what we need is a citywide park system with small, with medium, with large, with active, with passive, with contemplative. 5, let's not copy, but yes, let's adapt. Everyone can learn from everybody. You know, cities, when people say don't change, they do change. Melbourne 30 years ago would not have been in the top 300 cities. Well, now it's in the top 5 in any place. For example, they have put public art all over the city, but art not for the people at 60 miles an hour, art for the people at 3 miles an hour, for the people walking. Trees, all of these trees that didn't have any trees, all of a sudden they put trees, and then it becomes good for everything, for health, for the business. Had all of these laneways, they work with the community to do restaurants and public art and flower shops. The city put the seed money and the private sector came and did the rest. So it's about doing, they do change. Rotterdam was built after the Second World War around the car, and in the last 10 years, they have done all of these beautiful transformations. You know, you got cars on both sides, look at car storage, take them out of one side, and it's totally transformed. It looked like magic, but it's not. It's vision and guts. It's about action. Barcelona is already a good city for walking, but they say we're going to improve, not 5%, not 10%, 66%. They got all of this grid where you walk, bike, or cars in all the streets. Now they're creating the gigantic blocks, where only one is for everything, then walking. Then Everything, walking, walking. And actually last week they said also that they're going to improve by 30% the tree canopy. 6, it's about the benefits. It's not about walking or cycling. It's not about parks or streets or sidewalks. It's about how are we going to have a great New York for everybody. It's about the benefits. And this has so many benefits for culture, for education, for recreation, for environment. We got to have different benefits because the citizens, they have different interests, as well as the decision makers. Maybe one councilor cares about the environment, but another cares about economic development, or another about health. Is this what the future looks like? You know, it's not how people look. It's that obesity is about heart attacks and respiratory problems and anxiety and depression. In the US, 1 out of 3 people are obese. These are the 35 wealthiest countries in the world, and the US is last. The US is so fantastic in many ways, but not on this one. But when they tell me, oh, Gil, it's always been like that. No, 20 years ago, we didn't have any state with more than 20% obesity. Today, we don't have any with less than 20% obesity. So we got to improve the school lunches. We got to have farmers markets in every neighborhood. We got to have urban gardening so children and everybody learns that the tomatoes don't come out of a factory. But also, we got to have physical activity. Physical activity is kind of the magic drug. When people are waiting for the magic pill, it's called physical activity. It's only 60 minutes a day for children, 30 minutes a day for adults. It's urgent that we do physical activity at all ages. But the only way in New York, and actually everywhere, that we're going to be physically active, the only way is if we walk or bike as a normal part of everyday life. We might play soccer twice a week. We might play tennis twice a week. But the only way that people are going to be physically active 5 or more days a week is if walk or bike as a normal part of everyday life. So we got to make it nice, and sustainable mobility and parks is good for physical health. But there is no health without mental health. Issues like loneliness. In the UK, they created the Ministry of Loneliness 6 months ago because loneliness can have impacts on heart disease, increases 29% the probability, 32% stroke, twice dementia. Depression has become the leading cause of disability. So we need, for example, having contact with nature is going to improve our mood, our cognitive attention. So we need to have nature everywhere because we know the benefits. Now all of the studies are coming in. If our neighborhoods have green, we're going to lower the depression, the anxiety, the stress. So it's not just because it looks nice, but it's because it's going to be good for our physical and especially our mental health. And it's totally doable. We got to have nature everywhere, in our house, in the sidewalk, in the school, in the library, everywhere. So let's become a guardian angel. When I say guardian angel of the gentle majority, by gentle majority I say it's not the squeaky wheel. It's the children, it's the older adults, it's the poor. When you do the meeting, the children are doing homework, or the poor have 2 and 3 jobs, they don't have time. So any decision that you make, always think, how will this impact the children, the older adults, and the poor? Let me give you an example of it. Children, in New York, we should have playability everywhere. We come out of this magnificent church, and we find a swing on the sidewalk. We're waiting for public transit, and there's a small parquet. You know, this is not about the money. This is totally doable. It's about having more creativity, letting people to be a little bit wild and creative, and have a city that is fun and exciting, where children are going to be playing everywhere. And they're going to be so happy. You see it in their faces, and don't think that this is just about fun and games. Playing is how children learn. Playing is how children develop their muscle strength, their capacity to concentrate, to develop friendships and socialize, and develop a sense of belonging to their neighborhood, to their city. So we should have playability everywhere. By the way, what is a child's favorite toy? Another child. So let's have places where they can have another child. You know, these are going to be the future city builders. We got to have every community, everywhere, a park within walking distance. Now, in the next, and New York has been doing something that has been really amazing, that is an example to the world. The Parks Department, with Trust for Public Land, they've taken schools like this and turned it into this. Really great. They have done more than 200 of this. This is great. Older adults who are living longer, not longer, much, much, much longer. You know, 200 years ago, we didn't have, all of these are the countries in the world, we didn't have any country that had a life expectancy above 45. So many of us would be dead by now. Now there is no country with a life expectancy below 45. You know, anyone that has ever lived in the history of humanity to 65, half are alive today. There were very few people over 65 100 years ago in the US. Now it's increasing. The population over 65 is going to double. The population of 80 is going to quadruple. And people are having fun. People are not thinking about retirement, but more about rehirement, about how to be re-engaged. We should create a movement of the 65 plus alive, because the biggest waste of resource that we have in America is called older adults. People retire and we cross them out. It's as if they had died. But they got 20, 30, 40 years left, and they are healthier and wealthier. They could be teaching English to the immigrants. They could be tutoring kids in the schools. They could be organizing Tai Chi in the park, or walking groups, or knitting groups. Our university should be offering 20, 30% of the courses to older adults, because older adults are hungry of knowledge. They want to learn about music and history and science. You know, in the US, you have double the life expectancy. It's very clear that we have learned how to survive. But when we got all of these issues of climate change and public health and congestion, I mean, climate change, we see it everywhere, even if some people don't want to believe. Now we need to learn how to live. How to live. And all of this magnificent session is about that. It's learning how to live, because a lot of this is about the built environment, how to develop these intergenerational places for older adults and children to meet. And of course, we need benches and walking paths. I mean, we know what is it that we need, and restaurants, drinking fountains, and so on. And we can make it happen. And then the poor, I'm talking about equity. I'm not talking about equality. The other day, someone did this cartoon that was really good. It says, this is equality. No, some people are starting so far behind. In many cities in the US, actually in most, we find areas of the city where the life expectancy is 60 years old. 10 minutes away, the life expectancy is 90. I don't know what is worse, that this happened or that we think this is normal. No, it is not normal. This is equity. Some might need more boxes. And then someone said, oh, if that's equality and that's equity, maybe this is reality. But in New York, you're smarter, so you think outside the box. It's not about boxes. Maybe it's about tearing down walls, thinking differently. But we have not been doing a good job. The US is the wealthiest country in the world, and 13 million children live in poverty. Out of the 35 wealthiest countries, the US is almost last. 1 out of 5 children live in poverty in the wealthiest country in the world. In South Korea, it's 1 out of 16. In Denmark, it's 1 out of 37. So maybe New York could say, okay, I don't care what the US is, but New York, we're going to look more like South Korea or Denmark. And from the point of view of mobility, people that use cars and mode of mobility are spending 20% of their income on mobility, when they could be spending 4% if they walk and bike and use public transit. So there is nothing that will improve more than allowing to downsize from 2 cars to 1 or 1 to 0. And it's going to be great for the economy. And last, it's political. Everybody needs to participate. Everything I've been talking about is not technical. This is not financial issues. This is political. And with a large P, because everybody needs to participate. This is not a time for citizens to be spectators. We need to create alliances, elected officials, and public sector. But not only public sector from planning or transportation. We got to get public health and education and environment and finance. And we need to get the citizens, the universities, the activists, the advocates, mass. We got to move from talking to doing. And of course, people are going to say, oh, Gil, but we are doing. Yes, you are doing, but you got to do more, and you got to do it faster. So, New York, let's do it. Now, thank you. Thank you.